wanted to put together a quick how-to covering some of the basic tools and then tips and tricks needed for changing the plugs, wires, coil, ignition control module, distributor, including the cap and rotor, on a 4.3 liter Chevy V6. The particular unit we're working on today is a 2005 Chevy Blazer, 110,000 miles, no current issues, just doing some preventative maintenance. So I wanted to just really quick jump into this, cover the basic tools. Gonna run through a list of tools right up front so you know what to grab together before you head out to the vehicle. And then later in the video, I'll jump into some of the nuances of how to use various tools in various areas to try to make life easy. Not gonna ramble on, gonna talk really quickly. Just wanna get through this video and get you all back on the road. Hope this helps someone. So working left to right here, we have a small center punch, small hammer, number 3 Phillips screwdriver. Could probably get by with number 2 as well. Ratchet or breaker bar, either will work. 15/16 socket, that's for turning over the engine. Should you want to change the entire distributor and want to find top dead center on cylinder 1 in order to better align the oil pump drive on that distributor before you pull it. A 5/8 offset box wrench, get into more about why we want that later. And then also a 5/8 flat style tappet wrench. Could probably get by with a regular combo wrench, but I find this easier to get in there with my big hands. Little 3/8 flex head, makes it super quick and easy to get into tight areas. About a 15-inch extension and then a 5/8 socket for getting the spark plugs. For this particular unit, that'll get you, I think, 4 or 5 of the 6 spark plugs. Smaller 3/8 extension here with a deep 10 mil. It's going to be for all of your nuts and bolts and studs around the ignition control module and coil bracket itself. Torx 15. That's going to be for getting little screws off the cap for the distributor. 10 mil offset box wrench. Going to be for that hold down bolt for the distributor itself. 10 mil, same thing, just to help with any of the 10 millimeter bolts on the brackets or the hold down for the distributor. Feeler gauge for your spark plug gap. Most plugs come pre-gapped. I like to double check them and adjust if needed. So for this unit, I think manual calls for a 0.45 gap, so that's what we're gonna make sure we have. I've got 2 picks, just different style picks. We'll get into how to use these later, but basically they're to help take apart the plug wire guides and MetroPack connectors without breaking them, so you can reassemble them easily and maintain their integrity. Little thumb wheel ratchet or 3/8 drive, little nut driver would work fine. I found that I needed a 7/32, 9/32, and then 7 millimeter as well to get all of the little nuts and bolts on the coil bracket for the replacement coil. And then I brought the plug wire puller out, or the plug boot puller out, but didn't find anywhere I could actually fit and use that for this job. So I also like to have a Sharpie and then a paint pen for marking just date and mileage that a particular item was installed. A little bit of copper anti-seize. I prefer to use it, some don't. You don't have to. Just like to make sure that I can get the properly torqued spark plugs out in 5 years or whenever I need to change them again. A little pickup tool, handy if you drop anything. Some dielectric grease. I like to throw some dielectric grease on the connectors, all the different MetroPack connectors as I reassemble them, and then just brake parts and electronics cleaner to clean up anything you want to clean while you're in there. I also find just a flashlight handy so you can get in and see well in all the various areas. So there's all the tools that we'll need. We'll jump into how to use them all and work through some of the trickier spots here in a sec. 2 tools real quick to add on to that list. You're gonna want a small flathead screwdriver like this. That's for adjusting the gap larger on spark plugs. And then an angle grinder, cutoff wheel. You can probably get by with a file. It's gonna take a lot longer. What that's for is cutting off the original rivets that hold your coil bracket assembly together around the original coil. So first thing I do for this job is pull the air box and pull the intake plenum off. Gives a lot more room. Airbox sits right here, plenum right here. There's also a little bracket that goes on this stud on the exhaust manifold right there. Just need 1 9/16 socket to pop that off. What it is a support for the upper radiator hose, but it's got some sharp corners, just kind of a pain in the butt to work around. So next thing I'll do while I'm in here is start unclipping all of these various plug wire guides. And what I use is the little dental picks for that. I like to try to retain these so I can reuse them and not have to buy new ones or do something janky with zip ties. There's just a little Let's see if we can get in there and look at it. Little catch right here, push that in as you pull this up. Alternatively, you can pull out the outer part of this hasp while pulling up, and that'll pop those all open. Similarly, all these MetroPack connectors work the same way. Want to just lift up here, pop those off. Once you've got those plug wires all unclipped, I like to go through and just use some masking tape, mark the plug wires so I know which one goes to which cylinder, 1 through 6. Distributor caps on these 4.3s generally are marked with the cylinder that they support. That makes it easier to match your plug wires back up when you're done. Worth noting on this 4.3 that on the driver's side, cylinder 1 at the front is cylinder 1, 2 is passenger side front, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So all of your evens on the passenger side, all of your odds on the driver's side, lower numbers at the front, and then higher numbers at the back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Next thing I'll do is blow out all the dust around where the spark plugs are, just so I don't end up tracking anything unnecessarily back into the cylinder. Then I'll start pulling these. The front plug on each side of this, you can get from the top of the engine, just reaching down into here. You want to use the 5/8 socket on the little flex head ratchet. For the rest of the plugs, you'll want to access from the underside. Most of them you can just shoot straight in on with the ratchet and extension. You can see here we've got our 2 plugs there. That's cylinder 3 and cylinder 5. I will say that cylinder 3 is a bit tricky to get into. Let me see if I can show here on the video the way I prefer to take this on. Just take that 5/8 wrench. That's the offset box end that's stubby, and get it up on here. And then once you've got it on there, it barely clears in that heat shield, but you've actually got room to pry up with a screwdriver or whatever on this side to break that loose. And then similarly, when you're tightening, you can just pull down from the top and then cinch it right up to here, and you've got the tension set about right. This is also where I use this small 5/8 tappet wrench. Once I've broken it loose, I'll use this up in here. You can only get about, I don't know, quarter turn at a time or so. Flip it over, turn it again. If you have small hands, I think you could actually probably get your hand up in there and take care of that a lot quicker than I can. Once you're ready to put your new plugs in, you're going to want to check the gap on them. Most spark plugs nowadays come pre-gapped. Spec for this vehicle, depending on the year, is 045 or 060. The plugs that I bought came pre-gapped to 045. A couple of them needed slight adjustment, probably not enough to where you really need to worry. Something else I keep an eye out for is the ground being centered over the electrode. A lot of newer plugs I've noticed tend to have the ground kind of bent off to one side or the other. When you're setting the gap, should you try to adjust them, something you want to be extremely careful of, especially on the iridium plugs, is that there's a very small, delicate electrode on the tip. So when you're adjusting that gap outward, you're going to want to just pry off the side of the plug against that ground like this without actually touching that electrode. And if you need to close the gap, I like to just throw that in a vise and just turn it ever so slightly, and it'll close up that gap just what you need. Once you've got your old plugs out and you're ready to put your new plugs in, these are my old plugs, so we're going to just pretend this is a new plug for a sec. I take a little anti-seize, put it right along here, and just wipe it around, wipe it off with a towel. All I really want to do is see anti-seize down in the valleys here. You want to be extremely careful about not getting it up here on the ground or the anode, and you don't need it slathered everywhere. Just a little bit will do. You can skip this step if you want. A lot of the newer spark plugs are plated and don't have a real high corrosion risk anyway. When you're tensioning the new spark plugs into the block, once you seated that spark plug flush with the block, you're going to go ahead and turn just about an 1/8 of a turn more, 1/12 of a turn, 1/8 of a turn, something in that range. You don't need them super tight. These particular plugs are a gasketless design, so they have a little tapered seat right there. That's what seals. So once that's mated with the block, you really just need to turn about a 1/12 of a turn, 1/8 of a turn, something like here to there. And you're going to have that locked in tight enough to be able to get it out next time. The new plug wire kit should also come with some dielectric grease. Important to install that just on the end of each of these terminals where they mate with the spark plug or the contact on the coil or distributor. This next step is going to only apply if you're changing the entire distributor or for some reason pulling the distributor out of the block itself. What you're going to want to do is put cylinder 1 to top dead center. That aligns your oil pump drive and the distributor drive gears to make it easy to reinsert the new distributor or repair distributor, whatever you're doing, by lining up the indicator marks on the distributor itself. So just turn it over. And what you'll do is actually just put your finger over the open hole on spark plug 1 right here, and you're just going to turn that over until you start feeling the air hiss. If you go for a full revolution of the motor, you'll feel an area where it hisses longer and harder, and then one where it hisses just briefly. What you want to do is on the long, hard stroke, which is a compression stroke, as that air is hissing out, continue turning the motor over until the air just stops. And that's when you're at top dead center of the cylinder. So as that piston is pushing up in the cylinder, it's compressing that air, pushing it out of your spark plug hole. And once the air stops pushing out, that means you've reached the top. If you're planning to change the distributor entirely, you're going to need a 10mm offset box wrench or combo wrench. You can get by with either. I find it easier to break loose with the box wrench, faster to back the bolt the rest of the way out using the open end. What you're going to need to do is get in here. That bolt that we need to get to is right there. This guy right here. And I found that if you come in underneath this fuel line, kind of parallel to the plane of the engine block, and then go over this way, it's the easiest way to get on and break it loose, and also when you're cinching it down to tighten it right there. Once that's loose, you can go ahead and pull the distributor up. You'll find that at least on all of the 4.3 vehicles I've worked on, you have a clearance issue with the distributor cap coming up here. So what I'll usually do is just pull the cap off. There's those two T15 torque screws there and there. This cap's gonna come off. Once the cap's off, you've got the clearance you need. You're gonna lift this up, just keep it straight. And you'll notice that if you set the cylinder 1 to top dead center before you pull it out, there's gonna be timing marks on it that align. So here's the old one that I pulled out, which looks like it's in pretty good shape still. So here's a timing mark on the shank. They look a little different depending on the brand you buy. It'll be something like this though. And then there's this little circle right here. You want those two lined up. And the criticality of that is that this little, what looks like a flat screwdriver essentially, is really a drive plug for your oil pump. And you need that to be lined up properly along with the timing gear for the distributor itself. So if you've got the cylinder set to top dead center, cylinder 1, when you pull your old distributor out, you should see this and this hole lined up. So what you want to make sure is before you slip your new one in, you have it lined up this way, and then you'll just take it and then just carefully slide it down into the hole. I do try to make sure that it's nice and clean around that hole before I stick it in. And as you get it down in, you should feel those teeth start to engage and it'll kind of rotate down into place. Once that's done, you've got it in the right spot. Come back over, tighten down that bolt, and you're good to go. Now that we've got our new plugs in, we're gonna go ahead and pull off our coil bracket so that we can replace the coil and replace the ignition control module. So that coil bracket on these motors is right here. These few holes here. There's this bracket for the throttle cable, and then this other bracket for the throttle cable as well. You can get away without unbolting these. You kind of just bend this up and force it out of the way. But it does tweak the bracket. I prefer to just take it off. It takes just a couple extra seconds to do those 10mm bolts. So it's a mix of bolts and studs here, holding all this together. You got your two connectors for your control module, for your coil. You want to take those off prior to pulling the bracket. Once you've got that bracket off, there's actually two rivets that'll be holding the original coil onto the vehicle. So in order to get those off, the only way I found is just take a little angle grinder with a cutoff wheel, grind those flush, just kind of cut off the heads of the rivets, and then just use the punch and hammer to tap those out. The new kits, I think, assume you're doing that, and all the new kits that I've ever seen for these vehicles come with two new little machine screws and new bolts or new nuts to hold this together. Something that I always try to do is just throw a quick layer of paint over this You can see it's easy to accidentally get into the metal a little bit as you're grinding that flush. Something else to keep an eye out for is the ignition control module itself should come with a small packet of thermal grease. What you want to do with that is make sure you clean your heatsink extremely well. A layer of thermal grease is actually going to go between the control module and the heatsink, and also between the heatsink and the backing plate that's part of the coil bracket. What that does is allow more efficient transfer of heat from that control module into the heatsink and away from the module to help prolong its lifespan. If you didn't get that little packet of thermal grease, you could probably get by using dielectric grease. I guess it'd be better than nothing. So that's it for this quick video. I hope somebody found that helpful. If you did, maybe leave a comment below. I've not been making videos for ages, but do work on all kinds of random stuff all the time, from industrial and commercial all the way to just passenger vehicles like this. Maybe I could put out content that would help others. So my goal would be to make them all short and sweet and to the point, not waste any time. If there's interest in that, let me know, and hope you all have a great day and good luck with your project.